like to call this meeting to order. Will the clerk please read the statement?
This is a meeting of the Township Council for Monday, June 25th, 2018. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the public and the press on January 5th, 2018, and was posted on the bulletin board in the municipal building in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-7.
Roll call.
Councilmember Ooms?
Here.
Councilmember Kadish?
Here.
Councilmember Van Tassel?
Here.
Councilmember Allberger?
Here.
Council President Murphy?
Here. Please rise to salute the flag. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. Prior to opening to public comment, I'm actually going to ask the mayor if he would not give his comments first, because he does have an engagement that he needs to get to, and he does have some pertinent information, so he wanted to make sure he was present to give that to you. So, Mayor?
Well, thank you. This governing body continues to pass and will continue to formulate ordinances that improve our community. We passed both a vacant building and a soil fill ordinances. Should this council present to me a maintenance and chicken ownership ordinance, I will sign both. As with all laws, we strive for voluntary compliance, but that goal is not realistic. Enforcement is required. Short-term rentals need to be regulated, but generally not prohibited. There are many good reasons why local government leaders are focused on finding ways to manage the rapid growth of short-term rental properties in their communities. There are an estimated 146 short-term rentals in operation in Vernon at present. I have received complaints from residents of so-called party houses, homes that are rented to large groups of people with the intent to party. These short-term rentals can severely impact neighbors and drive down nearby home values. Short-term renters may not always know or follow local rules, resulting in public safety risks, noise issues, trash, and parking problems for nearby residents. Increased tourist traffic from short-term renters has the potential to slowly transform peaceful residential neighbor communities into communities of transients, where people are less interested in investing in one another's lives, be it in the form of informal friend groups or church, school, and other community-based organizations. The absence of proper regulation or limited enforcement of existing ordinances causes tension or hostility between short-term landlords and their neighbors. Local service jobs can be jeopardized as unfair competition from unregulated and untaxed short-term rentals reduce demand for local bed and breakfasts, hotels, and motels. Enforcement is required, and that costs money. In the case of STRs, short-term rentals, the taxpayer should not pay for regulating and inspecting these rentals. The host should pay through a 6% occupancy tax and permit fee. The STRs are businesses. I recommend the following. Residents will be generally permitted to rent their homes for less than 30 days. An agreement with short-term rental companies, such as Airbnb, will charge 6% hotel occupancy tax and collect the hotel tax on the rentals in the township. The company will also reimburse property owners for up to $1 million in damage caused by renters. The ordinance will prohibit homeowners and renters from changing the character of the neighborhood. Currently, there are no safety inspections being made. The STR ordinance will ease the burden requiring that the owner obtain a CO for every change of occupancy by permitting owners of 7 classifications of properties to obtain an annual short-term rental permit, paying 1 annual fee and having 1 set of inspections for a 12-month period. The STR permit will be good for a 12-month period from its issuance, and will allow the owner to rent the property on a short-term basis up to a cumulative total of 220 days in that 12-month period. Classifications for allowable STRs. A single-family residence in a qualified community or a condominium as long as the respective association and bylaws permit short-term rentals. A single-family residence in commercial and resort zones. Qualified private communities can self-determine if the residents can be placed in a short-term rental program that is subject to township regulations and fee structures. Farms where the property is farmed by the owner and is a qualified farm. One unit in a double-family residence where the other unit is the principal resident of the owner. One unit in a multifamily residence where one of the other units is the principal residence of the owner. No more than 2 bedrooms, such as bedrooms, within a single-family residential dwelling in a residential zone where the room shares common kitchen and bathroom facilities, and the occupant of the dwelling unit and the remainder of the single-family dwelling unit is owner-occupied. This is the original definition of home sharing. Principal address means the address where at least one of the property owners spends the majority of his or her non-working time, and which is most clearly the center of his or her domestic life, and which is identified on his or her driver's license or state identification as being his or her legal address. All the above requirements must be met in order for an address to constitute being a principal residence. Short-term rental property owners are required to obtain a permit prior to advertising their property for a rental on a short-term basis. All advertisements for a rental of the property must contain the short-term rental permit number issued by the township. Eligible property owners or entities will submit a permit application to the Township of Vernon Zoning Department, together with all required documentation and the application fee. The township will issue a permit to applicants who satisfy all requirements, which includes an inspection of the property for the issuance of the annual certificate of occupancy. The permit fee, I suggest, is $250 annually. The fee for the renewal of the permit is also $250. The fee includes the STR permit as well as the fees for all inspections and the issuance of a required annual certificate of occupancy. Each time the occupants change the STR property throughout the year, property owners are required to fill out a short-term rental occupant change form and submit it to the township. This form requires, among other information related to the respective STR, the names, ages, and gender of each occupant who will be occupying the property. This form will be available and may be completed and submitted online. Just as in any standard application for a regular CO, when property owners rent their property in the township, this basic identifying information of the intended occupants of the property is required for purposes of police, fire, and emergency personnel, and township officials being aware of who is occupying the property at all times. Further, it is required to ensure that no overcrowding of the property is occurring. 3 violations for quality of life issues at the STR property within the permitted time use will result in forfeiture of the permit for the remaining of the year and subsequent year. The other issue, 3 Silver Spruce summary. On July 23, 2014, initial investigation of the incident received at the New Jersey DEP hotline. Site was inspected with New Jersey DEP inspectors and respective Soil Conservation District inspectors. The Soil Conservation District issued stop order in violation. The NJ DEP found potential violation at this site. On September 11, 2015, investigation of the incident reported to New Jersey DEP office again. County Soil Conservation issued stop order, and the DEP office issued a warning letter during the previous inspection. On October 5, 2015, the site visit to verify all fill material slide complaint received by the DEP office. This investigation found mostly dirt, wood mulch, stone, and a few pieces of concrete. The DEP investigator informed the property owner that the incident be reported to the Solid Conservation District immediately. This administration became aware of this situation in November of 2017. We just recently received the reports, and that's where these summaries are coming from, the DEP reports, through the assistance of Senator Orho and Congressman Gottheimer, who have supported my request since this matter was brought to my attention. We began to investigate on December 7th of 2017. Vernon Township code enforcement officials were present to do a follow-up on a complaint of excessive truck traffic entering the property and potential illegal dumping occurring. DEP inspected the property with a police escort. Property owner refused to allow Vernon code enforcement members onto the property. Findings: large pile of questionable concrete material was still present and did not appear to be disturbed or added to. However, a few new smaller piles of aggregate, crushed stone, gravel, lumber, and mulch materials were new and were all clearly being used as product. On December 19, 2017, joint site visit was conducted with representatives of Vernon Township and the DEP offices to verify whether incoming and outgoing truck traffic and importing fill material on the Silver Spruce site. There was a mixture of concrete, brick, block, asphalt pieces, and large pieces of stones and concrete at the bottom of the side slope at few sections. There were no trucks importing fill material, and no filling activities was occurring during the investigation. Overall site appeared to be same as seen on the visit in November of 2017. The residential property owner was advised not to import construction, solid waste, fill materials without proper analytical data/paperwork. On January 12, 2018, the DEP officials met in Trenton. Determination made as follows. In spite of these filling activities are unacceptable, state officers were unable to determine the appropriate regulation of their program to regulate this filling/importing fill material activity at that time, and that all representatives present in the meeting uniformly believed that this is a local matter. The Soil Conservation District was to take the property owner to court to enforce the county stop work order. This administration found itself without state and county support to regulate and/or the dumping at 3 Silver Spruce and other localities in the township. We then began to research and ultimately pass our own soil fill ordinance. DEP has continued to conduct inspections at 3 Silver Spruce and other locations within the township. On January 26, 2018, the DEP received information that excavated soil from a BP gas station was transported to the residential property without proper authorization. The inspectors were unable to find immediate solid waste concern at that time. On April 6, 2018, based on recent observations, the inspectors were unable to detect any immediate solid waste concerns during the inspections. On April 10, 2018, which you all know, this governing body passed Ordinance 18-15 to regulate dumping of potentially contaminated soil being trucked into our community. The ordinance added a new chapter to our municipal code. It established soil fill application requirements and permitting fees for a practice that had largely remained unnoticed by most local officials. 6 summonses for alleged violations have been issued to date at the Silver Spruce location. On May 2, 2018, DEP inspectors again inspected the site. 3 trucks were waiting to dump unloaded material, and material contained in each truck was wet soil-type material. The material contained incidental amounts of small pieces of stone, concrete, and asphalt. The inspectors were unable to detect any abnormal odor, color from the material deposited on site and/or material contained in the trucks. A visual analysis of the fill material determined it is not solid waste. Based on physical nature of the fill material, the inspectors were unable to determine whether the fill material exceeded the residential direct contact soil remediation standards or non-residential direct contact soil remediation standards. On May 25, 2018, DEP inspectors conducted yet another inspection at the site. Upon arrival, these inspectors were met with the representatives of the residential property and the Vernon Township. The property owner denied access to the township representatives. Area was filled with mostly dirt and soil. DEP inspectors observed broken bricks on top surface or filled area and mixture of stones, broken bricks, and blocks on a few sections of side slope. All material, metal, plastic drum, totes, etc., were empty and as seen during their previous inspection. The inspectors were unable to detect any abnormal odor and/or color from the material deposited on the site and/or other areas. A visual analysis of the fill material determined it is not a solid waste as per the New Jersey regulations. Also based on the physical nature of the fill material, the inspectors were unable to determine whether the fill material exceeded the residential direct contact soil remediation standards or the non-residential direct contact soil remediation standards. Last Friday, Congressman Gottheimer called state officials and demanded that all related information in this matter be forwarded, as promised 2 weeks earlier by the DEP, to the Attorney General's office for a probable cause determination for a search warrant. Discrete environmental core testing is needed to determine if chemical contamination has resulted from the property owner's refusal to abide by the county stop work order and to submit a plan as requested. Over this past weekend, our attorneys wrote up a complaint and requested an injunction to stop the dumping on Silver Spruce. I reviewed the document Sunday night and signed it. Earlier this day, it was presented to the Superior Court. We hope to have a decision this week. This has and will cost the Vernon taxpayers thousands of dollars, but I have no choice but to use every legal means possible to stop this insanity. I have requested assistance from the county, and we will await the reply. I'm requesting that residents contact our freeholders and respectfully ask for their assistance in this matter. This matter should have been spearheaded by the New Jersey DEP, County Board of Health, and Soil Conservation, not our municipality. The cost of enforcing a 2014 county stop work order has fallen on us, the Vernon taxpayers. The lack of action by upper levels of government is simply not right. But yet the county reaches into our pockets to fund the 911 center that we do not use and the county solar fiasco. Furthermore, a bill to regulate dirt brokers has been sitting in a respective New Jersey legislature committee for 2 years. It is my opinion, based on the DEP, Vernon Police, Sussex County Soil Conservation, and zoning reports, that the property owner at 3 Silver Spruce is operating an alleged landfill without a recycling facility approval. This can result in an environmental hazard. We cannot wait for the state to act. The operator has ignored a stop work order issued in 2014 by Sussex County Soil Conservation. Vernon Township's position is the New Jersey DEP has an affirmative obligation to analyze soils and rectify environmental concerns and hazards. New Jersey DEP is requested to conduct core, discrete environmental testing for chemical contamination. Legislation is required to permit the New Jersey DEP the authority to enforce environmental regulations, including the requirement that all landfill operations be subject to discrete environmental testing by a New Jersey DEP authorized lab. I desire to present to this council an ordinance on July 9th, an ordinance similar to Bill 1683 to regulate dirt brokers. I also wish to include severe penalties for failure to comply or operate in an illegal facility, punishable by fines up to $3,000 per day and up to 364 days incarceration, which is the maximum incarceration period for a municipal ordinance violating permitted by state statutes. On other matters, Councilman Kadish met with me and expressed concern over Herald Square regarding financing. A special legislative $1 million grant was received during the mid-2000s. $500,000 was used to purchase the property for the wastewater system. 7 acres of Herald Square was provided to SCUMA for the recharge station. Our obligation has been met, and there is no clawback regulation regarding the grant. Other grants received at the time were also researched. None were used to purchase Herald Square, although several are related to the wastewater plant and sewers. The only stipulation that we can identify is that no blasting can be allowed. I also was at the chamber last week, and I requested Senator Orho's assistance with the following. New Jersey's Urban Enterprise, UEZ program, exists to foster an economic climate that revitalizes designated urban communities and stimulates their growth by encouraging businesses to develop and create private sector jobs through public and private investment. The same program should be legislated for communities affected by the Highlands Act to stimulate economic growth. This program would cut the New Jersey sales tax in half in Vernon. And finally, I respectfully request the council to permit feather signs for business, providing police and zoning concerns are met. And as a couple of last-minute notes, our CFO, Ms. Elka Yetter, has resigned effective July 5th. Ms. Yetter has been hired by our county as their new CFO. My final point is to Governor Murphy. Please drain the swamp and get to the high ground. Dealing with state agencies on such issues as railroad ties thrown in the wetlands, legends, and now this dumping issue has been a nightmare marred in red tape. and an I can't do attitude. Show the bureaucrats the pathway out and create an environment where a can do attitude exists. I believe the majority of state employees want to do their jobs and be good at doing their jobs. We need an environment that they can work in and solve problems without the fear of reprisals. Local governments look up to the state for help. And in the last 2.5 years that I've been mayor, it's been missing. Thank you.
I have some questions. May I? So going back to the short-term rentals, you're saying that lake associations will be able to determine if they'll allow that in their community?
I think they should have discretion in their bylaws. Again, these are just my ideas. I know tonight the council will discuss it. So it's up to what the council decides, and then we incorporate it in the Airbnb or the short-term rentals. You know, I asked the whole council, and only several met with me, or send me your emails, what your requests are, so we can formulate this together. There's a lot of issues. But I think you have to formulate them, send them to me so we can discuss them, and we can put it together. And I will forward it to our attorneys.
Okay, so the lake communities. So what will be their recourse if they do allow these short-term rentals and there's violations?
That's for the council to decide.
Well, it seems like you've determined.
I
talked
gave
about
you
it
my
a little bit.
suggestions. You guys let me know what you want. How do you guys feel about it?
Well,
It
you
can't just
came
all
up
be
with
me.
3
You're the governing body.
violations.
You have to let me know what you think.
One of the things with the lake communities, they have their own bylaws. So if you're using one of the problems that actually, I think it was Jack McLaughlin last year came forward to you and said that the problem they were having are people were renting out their homes for the weekends, for the week, what have you. And the residents there felt that they were cramming the homes. There was a lot of noise. They were using the beaches. They were using all the amenities, and they didn't necessarily have the appropriate permission. They didn't have badges. So that's something that occurs in those lake communities. We don't regulate that. We have nothing to do with their permits for their beaches or their tennis courts.
And Ms. Holmes, I don't know what the legal standing is on private qualified communities versus township ordinances. We would have to look to legal to research that and what the case law is. So I can't answer that question because I'm not an attorney and I have not read the case laws on it.
Right? They may vote on it.
It may just be as their simple regulation, but I don't want to take their sovereignty away.
Okay.
Kudos for what you put together. I thought that was a great presentation.
So thank you.
So now going to the Harold Square, I wasn't aware that that was bought with grant money. So we bought with grant money from the state.
It was a special legislative grant, and we just discovered this last week.
Okay.
We found it because there's piles and piles of financials left from the mid-2000s, and we've been conducting literally page-by-page research to ease any kind of controversy that could arise. And we found this, and then we looked into it, and there's no clawback. In other words, if we sell it, we have to pay back that money. We fulfilled our obligation by the 7 acres going to the county.
So just to make sure I understand this properly, we bought a grant for the whole parcel, but we only needed 7 acres for.
They paid $1.25 million, and at the closing, they threw another $50,000 in, and no one can explain why. And that also, if you don't have a copy, I'd be glad to get you a copy of the 2009 forensic audit. And it lists that all in there. And they had further questions and said there should be further investigation, but there never was.
So then, is it right to sell it? I mean, we bought it with grant money from the state. Now we're
Partially.
making money off of it.
It's sitting there doing nothing. I've had 4 developers inquire about it.
No, I understand. I'm
just-
happy with selling it, but I'm just talking about ethically that we took money from the state and now we're going to be making money off of it.
Well, we're actually going to be losing a lot of money. We're going to lose hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Well, but the intent was they gave us the money to buy it.
For basically that recharge station. We
Just
fulfilled
for
it.
the recharge station? So why'd we take all that to buy the rest of the property?
That's why you need to read the audit report. Because the questions you're asking are asked in that forensic audit report.
Okay, so.
There is no answer. They should have investigated.
They're also traceable by going into the tax records and tracing some of the paperwork that came with that.
But the audit is quite explanatory.
Remember, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
So there's nothing in there saying,
We can't find anything. And remember, the first appraisal was
isn't-
$440,000. Then, within like 363 days, it jumps to $1.2 million.
well, that,
We all shake our heads. I agree. I don't know why that happened, and the forensic audit points that out also. But if you need, stop by and I'll give you a copy of that report.
My only concern is what I said in the last meeting, and that is, as it was explained to me, and now the engineer did not bear that out, is that the soils in those two properties are unique in terms of recharge. And if we ever need an expansion, that there was no other place in Vernon that would be adequate to serve the needs the way that site does. And considering the great scandal that took place in terms of its cost, it seems to me to sell it for $125 or whatever the minimum price would be foolhardy in case we ever have to expand. And we can't foretell when that might be.
You wouldn't be able to expand. It's difficult walking, but when you get through the recharge, you are on solid rock. The only even significant soils are all the way over on Root Town. You can't blast on the site because then you could disrupt the pipes
And the layers,
and the soils.
layers of soil.
So
yes.
immediately behind, and it is a difficult walk, you get up there, it's solid rock. And I did have one developer out there last week, and he's not interested anymore because he said you can't do anything with it.
That's makes it a good candidate for the park that was planned.
They actually had a Herald Square, apartments and condos and stuff planned for that back in the early 2000s.
On the drawings, it's community park.
Yeah, well, but it's up to the council what you decide to do. But we've done our due diligence as much as we can. We spent
And I thank you
weeks-
for that.
You're welcome.
Anything
You
else?
Thank you. I have a family matter I have to attend to. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to open up, may I have a motion to open up to public comment?
Second.
All in favor?
aye.
Any opposed? Is there anyone that would like to step forward to comment on any items on the agenda?
Sally Rinker, Vernon. It's interesting, the mayor omitted the fact that in 2016, I brought the soil fill issue to him, and that was omitted out of his report, and it was not attended to at that time properly, obviously. Airbnbs on the agenda as an item for discussion tonight. Really? I find it astounding that in the face of the soil dumping issues going on in our town, and how far from solving this issue this administration is, Airbnbs have taken priority tonight as the discussion item. At the last council meeting, Council Chair Murphy spent an inordinate amount of time preventing discussion on the soil fill ordinance. Instead of welcoming...
You know what?
It's
Excuse
about
me.
the Airbnbs.
Yeah.
Instead of welcoming the insistence of Councilwoman Ohms to do so. For the mayor to offer that the soil ordinance that was passed as a solution is insufficient because we all agreed it needs to be worked on at the last meeting. While the pushback to publicly discuss the issue to improve the soil fill ordinance continues,
This is not on the agenda either.
soil dumping continues on a daily basis.
You know,
We
your
have actually
attempt,
new
I know, but
locations.
your attempt to
Since-
continually try to
since every
railroad the
single
meetings
meeting that we've
is
come,
awful. You're hurting this town.
thereafter
You are
every
hurting
day.
this town. You're not working with this
Failure of
town.
this mayor and certain council members to prioritize dealing with and solving this problem is unacceptable. So go ahead and discuss Airbnbs tonight and demonstrate how wrong your priorities are for us. Airbnbs.
Is there anyone else?
They're important.
Yeah. Is there anyone else that has any comments to items on the agenda? May I have a motion to close to public?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Next, may I have a motion to open, may I have a motion to adopt the following minutes? The regular meeting minutes of May 31st, 2018.
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Councilmember
Yes.
Councilmember Kadesh?
Yes.
Councilmember Van Tassel?
Yes.
Councilmember Wahlberger?
Yes.
Council President Berman.
Yes. As far as the discussion on the Airbnb, the mayor was actually adding that into his report, so unless anybody has any comments on that,
I'd like to see his comments in writing.
well, he can provide them to you, so.
Yeah, I agree. If you could email those to us. Should we not wait for the communities to decide what they want to do before we go forward?
Well, I don't know that we're going forward with anything. I think he just wanted to
Well,
bring something
if-
forward.
If indeed
That's-
we go forward with it, maybe we should know what the communities want to do.
Well,
before-
that is the mayor's intent because of the community's input. They
Well,
would
it sounded
really-
like he wanted to do something right away. I'm talking about the lake communities.
Yes, so
Maybe
am I.
we should know what they want to do, put it out there, and let them work on it before we work on it, because it most likely will impact them the most. So I think maybe our order or sequence might be off, but that's just me talking. I would like to see what they want to do first.
Moving on to the consent agenda, Resolution 18171, refund overpayment for Boiling Springs Savings Bank, Block 190, Lot 9. This authorizes the refund of overpayment. Resolution 18172, Chapter 159, resolution requesting approval of revenue and appropriation amending the 2018 budget as a revenue and appropriation of $52,125.99. This inserts into the budget funds for the Clean Communities Program. Resolution 18173, authorizing negotiations for a roll-off vehicle under NJSA 40A:11-53. The township went out for bid twice for a roll-off vehicle. This authorizes negotiations for this purchase. Resolution 18174, renewal of liquor licenses in the Township of Vernon for the 2018-2019 licensing term. This renews the liquor licenses for those liquor licenses that have been paid for the renewal and the liquor license under the ABC regulations. Resolutions 18175, renewal of inactive liquor license in the Township of Vernon for the 2018-2019 term. This renews the license of an inactive license for Scully's. Resolution 18176, authorizing the upgrade to the enterprise license of Spatial Data Logic. Spatial Data is upgrading their platform. This provides the township with the upgrade for the remainder of 2018 at no cost. Resolution 177, resolution appointing alternate fund commissioner. Our alternate fund commissioner is resigning. This appoints a new alternate. May I have a motion to adopt resolutions 18171 to 18177?
Motion.
May I have a second?
I'll
There you
second.
have it. Roll call?
Councilmember Wong?
Yes.
Councilmember Kadesh?
Yes.
Councilmember Van Tassel?
Yes.
Councilmember Wahlberger?
Yes.
Council President Berman.
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt resolutions 18171 to 18177.
Next, we have the introduction of ordinance 1820, an ordinance replacing Chapter 447 of the Code of the Township of Vernon entitled Property Maintenance. This establishes property maintenance standards within the township. May I have a motion to introduce ordinance 1820 with a public hearing on July 9th, 2018?
I'd like to make a motion to discuss this first
Sure. Is there a second?
before we introduce.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, I have some concerns with this. I know at the last meeting I had mentioned that in the original one, it had people that turn off their utilities. That would be a violation, because I had mentioned that many lake communities turn off, their lake homes and maybe use seasonal. But it shouldn't just apply to the lake communities, it should apply to everybody, not just lake. In the ordinance, the new ordinance, I believe it applies to just only lake community. I think it should apply to all of Vernon. Do we really, why?
What section are you referring to?
I think she's referring to F
One has the definitions in F,
F?
and F.
F,
public nuisance. I don't understand that statement anyway.
right? And the one, because you crossed out or added in the blue, am I correct?
It's an addition.
Yeah, but what does it mean? This shall not include homes without utilities.
What happens in some of the lake communities, let's say for Highland Lakes, traditionally it was a summer community, so there are still people that come up only in the summer.
And turn off their utility
And then they-
during the winter.
That's what I'm confused
No,
about.
no, it's not turn off, it says without.
Well,
Yeah.
but that,
Well, they actually,
the sentence has to be reconstructed,
Okay.
because it's confusing.
But do we really care if a home has turned off its utilities? It's the maintenance. We're looking at the outside and the aesthetics. Do we really care what goes on the inside?
Besides, that's covered by other codes.
I mean, I'm just asking. I'm not trying to be. I mean, whatever you do with your own utility or not is, I think, somebody's personal business. So that's one of my comments. If you could take notes of that. Then we go over to, let's see here. F period E period in 447-10, exterior of buildings and premises. So it's describing in this portion the following provisions from the BOCA National Property Maintenance Code. I don't know, anybody look that up?
It's the Boca Code.
What is it called?
The Boca Code. It's a national.
Right, and they have an international one. I looked it up. It had a lot of recommendations. So we're saying here that in F period, E period, exterior painting, all wood metal surfaces shall be maintained in good condition, right? In our last ordinance, it went on to say peeling, flaking, and chip paint shall be eliminated and surfaces repaired, or repainted, rather. Well, what's the definition of good? Because that sentence that you crossed out really defines what good means. It doesn't have peeling, flaking, and chipping paint. So what is the definition of good? Because we just crossed that out. And then I say, who's going to determine what good is? What good for me is maybe different than what's good for you. So I do believe there should be some kind of definition of good. So then we go to section L. So we're talking in this section about how homes and commercial businesses, the aesthetics, and we talk about roofs and things like that. But then we go on to section L, that we're crossing out anything about the canopies, the marquees. So you could have a business with the falling down sign or something that would not look nice. We crossed that whole paragraph out. In fact, a lot of this is just describing the, you talk about structural deficiencies. I mean, if we're looking at a property maintenance, when you want your houses to present nicely, you really have crossed out a lot of it.
Well, a lot of it's covered in other ordinances, other codes,
Which one?
the building codes.
I'd like to see the building codes prior to. So then, yeah, we have crossed out a lot of stuff.
well, a lot of this,
Storage of
the attorney went over with the zoning officer.
All right, well,
So
those are my recommendations.
No, I'm just letting you know that where this was, those items, a lot of these items were not just arbitrarily removed.
Oh, I'm sure they're not.
That was a
But-
discussion with the zoning officer.
All right, well, maybe you should have sent us the notes from the zoning officer then.
They're
I
in
wouldn't
here.
know.
You, just so you're aware, you did get 2 copies of this, one showing changes.
Yes, I
Yeah.
have them.
Well, that's where
But
that
I
came
don't
from.
have what he went over with the zoning officer. I wouldn't know. I mean, what are we trying to do here? If we have other ordinances that cover this, really, then what are we doing?
That's not, I don't think that's what Councilmember Kadish said to you. Is that what you said to her?
Well, I don't think there's need for duplication when they're covered in other,
Right, but
Codes and
within
ordinances.
the building. But one of the items under exterior painting, wood and metal surface, I wasn't even sure that one needed to be in there because primarily what a lot of residents, and I gave you a couple pictures of
Right.
occupied homes. One of the major issues in town is that people that are occupying homes, living there, they're not maintaining them.
Okay.
They're not cutting their lawns. They have tarps, blue tarps on their roofs. I don't think there's much that can be done with a vehicle if it has a license plate on it. But, some of them have those, some of them have trash. There's lots that maybe have equipment sitting on it for years. And those are items that are just not being maintained. But when putting an ordinance together, a lot of these other issues come up. What the zoning officer was attempting to do is remove some of these things because it's going to be prohibitive. Now, when you have a neighbor calling and saying, let's say if it was the chipping paint, I see a neighbor there's chipping paint on their house, that becomes very tedious. So that's why that's why I provided you these pictures, because this is what people are dealing with, and these are these are neighbors. I didn't give you the
So
addresses.
are we just looking at just the agriculture around the house that we're dealing with, or are we looking at homes? Because it is arbitrary. We're talking about handrails and stuff, but then we have handrails in here, and like I told you, exterior painting, good. So are we just looking at structure? I mean, what then is the objective here?
The objective is to really give the zoning officer some direction and to be able to help the residents in town be able to enjoy their home in the way that they're...
I get that, but I'm saying, what's the objective in this if we're only looking at, like you said, the weeds and the
Well,
trees are overgrown?
I brought this to show you
Or
that
are
it's
we
not
just
just
looking
bank
at
properties,
structure?
because it was brought to my attention that this is only happening with bank properties. So that's why I brought
Okay,
this.
all right, well, but whatever, regardless. So again, what is this?
So
Are we
what
trying-
recommendations are you making to
Are
change?
we looking
Are-
at structure? Are we looking at aesthetics? Are we looking at agriculture? Because it's all sort of mixed in there.
Well, I think it's a little bit of everything. I mean, they are looking at structures. If there's a home that's being occupied and there's a shed that's falling down, that could be an issue. So,
But if we are looking at a home that's not maintained, but again, we say good, the painting has to be good. I think there needs to be a definition of it, or just take it out completely then.
that's what I just thought, that
Take it
line
out
needed
then.
to be removed.
So after you read all this, it's sort of it's just structure. It's nothing about how the house basically looks when you look at the rest of this. So if that's what you want, and you take that out, it's just structure, not aesthetics. So then my last thing is, why would a farm, first of all, we don't, we have exemption. Any farm assessed property that is registered with the township in the state of New Jersey shall be exempt from this chapter. So we don't define property. Property, I don't think we have a definition of that.
It's in premises.
It's in premises?
Yeah.
Okay. So why would a farm, what's the rationale why a farm should have a home on it that is, because a premise is a lot with a home on it, be structurally, because again, this is all about structure
Doesn't
to
that fall
me,
under the agriculture?
be okay, and why, what's the rationale? Just curious.
The agriculture is supervised by the County Board of Agriculture and the Right to Farm Act. I sent Marlon a note saying, if we read this literally, this ordinance, cows will be wearing diapers. I don't think that's appropriate.
Well, I believe that I understand the right to farm, and you have to make certain allowances for farmers because they can't uphold a lot of our ordinances. However, if it's coming to the home, why would one person's home have to follow this and another person's doesn't? Their home has nothing to do with farming. So I would be very upset if the town came after me and said, I have to do all this work, and there's a farmhouse sitting right next to me that's falling down and violating all these.
No, that's the way it works.
You don't think that can happen?
They have to follow code as well.
Well, I don't think that they should be exempt from this.
Well, are you going to send a violation to a farmer because orchard grass, which is basically a weed,
Well,
grows
then in the
taller than
weed,
20 inches?
then in the weed section, you would exempt that. You're right. That's a perfect acceptable use of that exemption, is because the farmer can't control that. I get that. But when it comes to the home, that's a whole different story. That has nothing to do with farming. I would say in that weed section, definitely make it exempt for a farmer. But when it comes to a house, that's different. Sorry, that's what I believe. And I would be very upset if I was the neighbor and I was getting violations for my home, and the person with the same type of home next to me isn't. It's two different things. I agree with you, Dan. When it comes to farming and these weeds and some other things, yes, they should be exempt. But not when it comes to the house. They need to follow the same as anybody else. I mean, we have homes that are farm assessed that sit right on the road. Would you want that to look like a...
I don't know that
What
the
we're trying to
homes are
eliminate
not
here?
farm assessed,
Pardon me?
it's the property.
Well, the property as he
Well,
defined it
I know,
is
but
a
you're saying the
lot with
homes
a
are farm
home on it.
assessed. No, the homes are not, it's the property that's farm assessed. But
No,
you,
but we say property, and property, according to this, is, like you said, it's in premise, and premise consists of a house and a lot, or just a lot. So that's all I'm saying about that. And then I think there was something else here that was crossed out that I did not agree with. Let me just find it. They shall not be stored or used at a location visible from the sidewalk, streets, other public areas of adjoining properties, equipment, and materials relating to commercial or industrial uses unless permitted under the zoning ordinance for these premises. So somebody could park something on a lot and leave it sit there and let it rust and decay, and that would be all right, or does that fall under some other...
I think I just brought that up to the attorney. That's one of the things I just said.
Pardon me?
That was what I just said to the attorney. I said as far as a piece of property,
Mm-hmm.
you know, if you have cars or vehicles or something stored on it and they are allowed to sit there year after year and not move.
Well, you just said if it has a license plate on it.
Or if it has a license plate, sometimes there's not much you can do with it.
Well, if it would violate the ordinance if you just let your car sit there and rot. If we're making the ordinance, we're putting in here what we want, and we don't want cars sitting on a lot rotting away, regardless if it has a license plate on it or not. People put their construction vehicles out on lots and just let them sit.
Of course they do.
Pardon me?
I said, of course they do.
Yeah, so maybe we should have a provision in there. It's been crossed out, but maybe it should
Are
be
there
in there.
any specific addresses that or do you have lots right now that have those?
Yeah, I go past one all the time when I go on, I don't know the name of the road. There's a backhoe sitting there. Every time I plow, I go past that,
Yeah.
and I see it. It's never been moved, and it's rusting there. It's on a pretty nice road.
So what you're actually looking at are, the agriculture was input that Councilmember Kadish had. Most of the other items were from the zoning officer. I think I brought up where it had the sidewalks, driveways.
Yeah, see, I don't know what you're trying to accomplish with this because you've crossed out anything that's aesthetic. It's more structural. I mean, if that's what the goal is for this, is
Well, the
not
problem-
to correct this, really.
It is.
More structure.
It is to correct them, but when you get to the sidewalks or their walkways and the painting of peeling, it ends up becoming prohibitive because we have one full-time zoning officer and one part-time. And with issues like the soil ordinance, things that went on in Legends, we have some of these massive undertakings that come up, and they always come up, they come up all the time. that you can't just be going to somebody's house to say, you know, well, your trim is peeling. So some of this is a bit overkill.
Well, then you got to take out that good and take out that whole section then.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is that's why a lot of that was removed, because you're asking why it was removed. And it was,
No, you didn't remove it.
no, a lot, you just asked why was so much of it crossed out.
All right, well, then you,
And a lot
then
of
you
it-
have to be consistent and take a lot more out then.
So what I'm saying is you also wanted to know what the zoning officer, and I was just letting you know what the zoning officer spoke to the attorney about in
All
this
right, well,
section.
then my suggestion is to remove that whole thing about the paint. Remove all of section F
E?
period,
It's-
E period.
It's actually E.
All of it, because that addresses exterior
Mm-hmm.
painting. So take that out then. And just
Yeah,
make
which
it
is
consistent.
which is overkill, because like I said, you're not,
All right,
a neighbor could not like the color of your paint and complain.
all right, then take that out. The occupant shall keep the part of the exterior property which such occupant occupies or controls in a clean and sanitary condition. Well, you know, your definition of sanitary may be different than somebody else's. I think you need to take a lot of this stuff out then. I'm finished.
I would like to attack this a little bit more globally. I think it's necessary sometimes to put pressure on neighbors who perhaps are neglecting their property for the good of the neighborhood. However, I find this ordinance not related to health and safety, which I think is necessary, and it's intrusive. It's invading our lives in such a way that I believe is very dangerous. You're poking the hornet's nest, so to speak. It's very arbitrary in terms of the standards, and the standards you're trying to set up are aesthetics, and you really can't do that. It's, as Harry has said, you have to trust your neighbor to take care of their property. But when you start forcing a kind of arbitrary standard on everybody, it becomes very, very confining. A $2,000 fine for a violation, I think, is a cruel and unjust punishment. The one idea I have is that you can't trigger a violation without a bona fide complaint. I don't want this to be a thing where the zoning officer goes wandering around in a neighborhood and keeping tabs like someone who's doing traffic tickets. To me, that's not appropriate. The worst thing is that the appeal process by the mayor has been taken out. I think it has to be replaced with some other form of appeal. I didn't read that area carefully, but I think that it would not be constitutional if no appeal is available. And those are the ideas that I have in terms of this. I think it's overreach, but that's my opinion.
You know, Dan, I agree with you. When I look at this, now that we're looking at it closely and discussing it, really doesn't do anything other than make sure homes are structurally sound.
Well, it does.
That's it. And everything else is ambiguous. So if
$2,000 isn't ambiguous.
well, I'm talking about the house or the lot. I mean, it really doesn't do anything. If people are looking for it to look aesthetically nice, the only thing in here will be the weeds. People cut their lawn. Otherwise,
You might come to a time when everybody wants people growing weeds.
there you go. So, but I agree. I'm starting to agree with you. I think it really doesn't say much, and it's intrusive. I agree.
So you're okay with not having one? Is that what you're saying? Or you'd like to see?
Well, I think the objective was to have homes that are, yes, they should be structurally sound and not collapsing and things like that. You're right there. Okay, maybe I'll take a step back. But that's all that this ordinance is going to do. If that's the objective, then you've completed it.
Well, the objective, I think, is really just to be able to clean up neighborhoods. It's to work hand in hand with the abandoned home ordinance, because the abandoned home,
But it's just structure, it's not anything else.
I think
And
most of
weeds
the,
over 20 inches.
most of the abandoned homes are bank-owned.
But we're not talking
So-
about abandoned homes. We already have that covered, don't we?
yes, but we're talking about, like I said, pictures that I gave you, and these came from neighbors. That was their complaint, is that these are their neighbors that live in these homes and are not. Now, maybe some of them are not able to take care of it.
Maybe we should find some very enthusiastic Boy Scouts.
That doesn't solve the problem, Dan. That doesn't solve the
Well,
problem.
the only thing that if this was across the street from me, this home with this tarp on it, okay, the ordinance is going to make them fix the roof, and if their weeds are over 20 inches, they'll have to cut the lawn. All right, I mean, that's something.
And I think these the people that live in this area would be happy if the tarp was just gone. They wouldn't even mind cutting the lawn, but they'd like to see the blue tarp gone off the house. It's been there for years. And their hands are tied. There's nothing anybody can do about it.
Well, like I said, it's mostly about structure in this. If that's what we want to do, is just control the structure, then you're okay. I'm okay with it.
So what I would like to do is make a motion to table, so we could just make some of the revisions, and maybe, if Marlon maybe could just address some of them with our zoning officer.
Okay.
And then,
Not a problem.
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
roll call?
Councilmember Holmes?
Yes to table.
Councilmember Cleaver?
Yes.
Councilmember Van Tassel?
Yes.
Councilmember Allberger?
Yes.
Council President Murphy?
Yes. And we'll table that to the next meeting? It's to the next meeting. Right? Next, we have our public hearing on Ordinance 1821, an ordinance of the Township of Vernon, County of Sussex, State of New Jersey, authorizing the sale of property owned by the township and not required for public purposes, more commonly known as Herald Square, 114 Route 94, Block 232, Lot 12. This ordinance permits the auction to be held on or about July 9th, 2018. May I have a motion to open public hearing for Ordinance 1821?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Is there anyone from the public that would like to step forward and comment on Ordinance 1821? Seeing no one, may I have a motion to close to public?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
May I have a motion to adopt Ordinance 1821?
Motion.
May I have a second?
Second.
Roll call?
Councilmember Holmes?
Abstain.
Councilmember Kadesh?
No.
Councilmember Van Tassel?
Yes.
Councilmember Allberger?
Yes.
Council President Murphy?
Yes.
Motion carries to adopt ordinance 1821.
Next, we're at public comment. Excuse me?
Just the extension note.
Public comments. You're limited to 3 minutes on any topic. May I have a motion to open to public comment?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Is there anyone from the public that would like to step forward and comment on any item?
Sally Rinker, Vernon. You know, sitting here listening to another ordinance getting tabled, I don't know when we're going to start doing things in the right direction. We've tabled so many ordinances this year and have to revisit them because we keep working backwards. We draft them, and then we have to go back because there was not cooperation, collaboration to get it right the first time. Once in a while it happens, but it's like all the time now. And of course, that brings me to the soil fill placement ordinance. So I want to thank Councilwoman Ohms for insisting to improve the soil fill placement ordinance. And I want to recognize Councilman Van Tassel and Allberger for agreeing that further discussion and improvement of the ordinance is needed. Councilman Kadish, I recall you being a staunch supporter for work sessions for important issues.
Still am.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Because if this isn't one that deserves it, I don't know which one does. So why is it that Council Chair Murphy thinks she has the sole right to red light or green light actions by this council? Why are some of you falling into that trap? If there was ever a time to assert yourselves, it's now. Council Chairperson Murphy does not have the right to silence you, as she has continually done. Without the inclusion of deliberation of all of you, we, the residents and taxpayers, become victimized by the will of one instead of the democratic process of a majority. We have 5 council members. We're supposed to have legislation done here by majority vote, right? But you can't have it fine-tuned to come to the table like what you get to vote on. It's got to come from you guys, too. You know, you can put your own things on the agenda. It doesn't have to only come from one person. So, you know, in High Ridge, we did suffer a soil fill issue in May with no permit, and a stop work order was issued. And hopefully you reviewed the photos that I dropped off at the last meeting. I went to the zoning department to review the file of that property on Wednesday, June 20th, thinking a permit was issued because on June 19th, a day prior, there was a bulldozer working on the property. So I made an assumption, right? Well, it was reported to me by the zoning officer no permit was issued yet on June 20th. Therefore, just like other sites in town, under stop work orders, the stop work order was defied in High Ridge as well. Why aren't we calling for a special meeting? Dan, workshop, please. Discussions for solutions when, contrary to the mayor's announcement that soil dumping has decreased in the township, believe me, it has not. In fact, I received a call this past Saturday and was informed just this past Saturday that another new soil fill location was underway, and I went and I did witness it myself, and I do have some photographs. I'll check with the zoning officer, but I doubt it was a permit by who I saw doing the work there. Ms. Soames made a motion at the last council meeting to establish discussion to solve these problems. Thank you. But in defiance of Robert's rules and disrespect for Mrs. Ohms as an elected official, Council Chairperson Murphy, who is required to ask if there is a second to the motion, completely ignored it, going on to offer excuse after excuse to stall the process again. We want an ordinance to protect us. We want the township to have the right to test suspicious soil now. Speeches are nice. Lengthy speeches that put us to sleep are very nice. But we need action. We're tired of the verbiage, okay? Ms. Holmes, Mr. Orberger, Mr. Van Tassel, and Mr. Kadish, please again make that motion and call for your own second if the council chair won't do it, and establish a scheduled public work session. I think on this very serious matter, it demands it. It will not be solved by Ms. Murphy's method of excuse-making and stalling. Her comment at the last council meeting that this administration has received severe criticism for engineering costs. Well, let's put that in context where it belongs. Criticism has come from the misuse of the engineer, okay? Not the warranted and needed use, which we need now. This is where we need our engineer, okay? This is not time to save engineering dollars on this problem. The workshop needs the inclusion of our attorney, the zoning officer, the mayor, the council, and the public to sufficiently address, improve, and solve this problem, all right? We don't want to hear the speeches anymore. We need soil testing. Thank you, Mr. Van Tassel. If you could keep your eye on that for us.
We all will, I'm
We
sure.
need to hear from this side of the council, too. So
Sure we all will.
please, let's all work on it. And maybe we can have that
Page up
workshop so we can get everybody here
don't think so.
at the same
We are.
time, instead of the behind the scenes, give it to the attorney, you know, Ms. Murphy
Time, you're
has to
done.
control everything. Let's have 5 members
your
of our
time is up.
elected
Thank you.
council work on our issues as we all voted you to do. Thank you very much.
So before we continue, something that I'd like the rest of the public to know is that prior to passing that ordinance in April, we had a lengthy discussion. We had our engineer present. As a matter of fact, Councilmember Allberger could tell you that the engineer was very much involved, calling up the local businesses that do business in town, checking everything out, going to...
Point again, Gene. It's the
Excuse me,
public.
you
It's the
are...
public that needs to-
You're out of order, and you know what? You're out of order. You're not helping anybody in this town.
With your stalling and
Can we
excuses.
address this during council
We
comments?
can address this, but I like the public to know that a lot of the information, sometimes that public does give you, is misinformation.
Yeah, right.
We had a meeting, and as a matter of fact, Councilmember Allberger and I had a lengthy discussion about it. Our engineer was present. You can view the meeting. You can view everything that took place at that meeting before that ordinance was passed. As a matter of fact, many residents from Silver Spruce were here, and they were asking for this. They were here. They were thrilled it was passed. There was nothing in that ordinance. You know, we needed to put something in place in order to stop this. Nothing was happening. Nobody was doing anything. The county wasn't helping, so we put the ordinance in place. At least now, the zoning officer can go and address items. The zoning officer can be present. We can put the police there to try to stop them. The police were there on Saturday, and what did the trucks do? The trucks were ordered by the person that pulled that dirt up to this town and rerouted them to another location. In my opinion, the person that accepted that load, they knew farewell because they were involved in it before. Mrs. DeStassi is here. She's fully aware of everything that's been going on. So for anybody to get up and try to grandstand on an issue that's so severe, that's so severe to this town. This council is standing shoulder to shoulder with the public, and there's only a couple people from the public that continually come here, they show up, and they constantly just disparage. It's not helping anybody. If they put that much effort into helping this town as they do to bring it down, we'd be a lot better off.
Bring it down right now.
So anyway, in moving forward, there was a meeting last Thursday. The Environmental Commission was there, Councilmember Allberger was there, the mayor was there were some professionals.
What meeting?
And it was something that the mayor did not bring to the attention because this attorney reviewed, from the DEP or from that perspective, reviewed our ordinance and is making some suggestions to it. So that's something that will also be coming
I would
forward.
like a report on that.
That was arranged through the Environmental Commission chair.
I'd like a report on that.
Well, I don't have
I
a
wasn't aware of any meeting.
There's a council that doesn't even know about it.
It was a meeting that was arranged by the, like I said, by the Environmental Commission.
I'd like a report on that.
And when it's ready, it'll come forward, because I believe the business administrator is in communication with this attorney as to how to fine-tune our ordinance.
Well, before you even go on, it needs a lot of fine-tuning immediately. You guys wrote it wrong. Do you know in this town you don't need a permit for 500 cubic yards? You need to change that immediately,
Well, so anyway,
the way this is written. There's a lot of things that need to be
Councilmember Cage?
changed.
So anyway, is there anyone else from the public that would like to come forward and have any comments?
Excuse me for being nervous. I'm not used to
That's
doing
okay.
this. I'm Margaret DeStassi. I live on Silver Spruce, across the street from 3. Since 2009, my husband and I have been trying to get the dumping stopped and to have controls put on number 3. I'm here to tell you that Mr. Wallace seems to believe that he owns Silver Spruce. And in fact, none of us own it. It is a right of way. It is not a private road. And he has no right to stop anybody from coming on that road. I would like to ask if the town's attorney can investigate that, because I'm tired of hearing that it's private property, there's nothing that can be done. It's not private property. The road is a right of way. So that's all I have to ask, is if that vehicle can be looked at so that it can finally be determined that he doesn't have the right to control who comes on the road. My impression of being told that it's a private road, we have, quote unquote, no authority to go on there, is in essence saying if you commit a crime, which he has been found guilty of in this court, if you commit a crime on your own private property and you obstruct the ability to investigate that crime, you can get away with it, as is being shown since March 27th when he was found guilty. So if I'm misunderstanding the rule or the law, I would like to be corrected on it. Believe me, I have my feelings about this. But I believe that he is holding this town, this county, this state, and in particular our road hostage while he is making a ton of money with his illegal dumping and truck soil brokering. So thank you. I appreciate the time. And yet I am very nervous.
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to step forward?
Good evening. Linda Jacob, Vernon Township resident for 35 years. I'm here on behalf of the soil concerns in town, and I'm looking to see what you, as the elected officials in town, with our attorney in town, can assist us with to stop this. I think as a group, we're all willing to do anything we can do as public to do so, whether it is open a DEP case, I think we have, a number of us have, police reports, as well as soil conservation, as well as county solid waste. But you, as a council, you've had a private conversation, it sounds like? No, you haven't had a private conversation.
Not private. This was all done.
I would like my time, 3 minutes
was in
if I
public.
can, and no politicking behind, okay? This is serious stuff. I am blown away. There is better communication with myself and my 2 grandchildren at the dinner table. I've never seen anything like this. I go back to when the radon was coming from Wayne, New Jersey, where I was from, to Vernon, where I was moving to. I go that far back. I am also a victim of being a neighbor on a dump site. I want to know, as a council, what we can do. Can we have a meeting with the public and brainstorm? I've heard no communication up there, even on some of the topics that were on the agenda tonight. There's been so little said. One person talks, the rest keep their head down and do so. I am blown away. I'm a businesswoman for 35 years. I don't understand how things can possibly get done or not get done. So I am appealing to you right now to meet with everybody, to meet with myself, to set up a meeting for the public, with the engineer, with the zoning officer who has not returned my phone calls.
Thank you.
I asked for my moment.
I agree.
Okay? I don't know what you can do. Some of you are longtime residents forever. I commend every one of you for being on this council. I truly do. We're looking for some assistance. We're going to take our own routes as well, but we're looking for some assistance from this council. So I don't know if I'm allowed to ask questions, but my question is out there as to what have you done as a council?
Okay. We try not to have it as be a question and answer.
When can we have one?
I can have one with you right after the meeting.
I would like it to be more public than one-on-one.
Well, then, see, and that's, I'm sorry.
I am asking for my time.
That's not the
No.
way it's supposed to work, though.
But,
I understand, and really, I'm a big girl. I can't handle it myself. I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
It's a public comment because what happens is it ends up getting into debate, and then that's what happens. But I will tell you that I have, when they were in court, I attended court. We've talked to the senators. We've talked to everybody has talked. I know Councilmember Kadish, myself, I know Mr. Allberger. We all lived here in town during the radon. The difference between that radon, and anybody else can really, but the difference between that radon is we didn't have cell phones. We knew when the dirt was supposed to come. We knew where it was coming from. What's happening now is You can't turn it here. They get on the cell phone and they reroute it someplace else. The trucks that came in Saturday, they were coming from Pine Island. They're coming in from every entrance around.
I understand that.
So what happens is everybody's becoming very vigilant. And it's become just a huge issue. And I appreciate you coming forward and speaking and saying what you did, because, like I said, every single one of us up here are neighbors, are residents of this town. It has nothing to do with, like I said, we don't want to get into any petty antics with anyone. We want to solve the
I
problem.
want to solve the problem, but I think
Right.
it starts with communication.
It does.
Is that not true?
It does.
Harry has done a great job, because there was past administrations before Harry was in office and before this board was even on board that it was brought up to, and nothing got resolved. So I commend him
Right.
for what he's done so far, but we're still falling short.
We are.
We're still
We are.
falling very short
We are.
that somebody can be allowed to basically commit the crime that's being committed.
And I'm not sure, I think tomorrow there's a court hearing again. I'm not sure if that will be taking place. Not sure if it'll get postponed or canceled or what time it'll even happen. But the public is more than welcome.
And while I'm concerned about our town and the ordinance of, keeping everything neat, Ms. Murphy is a real estate agent. I'm a loan officer in mortgage lending for 35 years. So yes. And while some of those properties you feel are bank-owned, it takes anywhere up from 2 to 5 years for foreclosure to happen. So while it is vacant,
So they said a long time.
while it's vacant, it is not necessarily bank-owned. It is still owned by the person. So my point being, we have a lot of issues. This dirt should be number one. Should be number one. And if Harry, I'm sure there's some fine-tuning of the proposal or the ordinance, whatever he called it, to put in place regarding not only a fine, but probably our attorney could probably address it, but some sort of fine in the way of jail time, punishment. I agree. Huge. Thank you, Mr. Gadsden.
Well, that was,
Huge.
this 32 pages is what the legislation's been working on. So if anybody would like copies,
Well, I hope y'all
just...
communicate on that a lot better,
But-
too, because, again, I'm not sure how much time goes into some of this on the back end, because we as a public don't get to see it. But when we come up and one councilwoman has such concerns and the others don't quite answer or address, I'm just hoping you're taking this seriously, because I don't think anybody's going to back down now. I think after many, 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 many years of it,
Well, I think what's happened also, Linda, is that the issue became widespread. Once the ordinance was put in place and for the most part the door was locked and the police were there, it became a necessity to start moving it around. That's just my opinion. So what's happening is that's why more of the public's coming forward, because it's now not just that one street it's affecting. It's affecting several other areas. And everybody's becoming very cognizant of that.
And
But-
that's even a little more concerning to know that poor Silver Spruce had been dealing with it forever and hadn't gotten anything acknowledged on it. So that's actually even a little more disturbing than now that it's a little more widespread throughout the township. So I know, again, a lot of it was before your time. Thank you for my time that I had the ability to speak. But I'm hoping we come together as a town, and not 2 weeks, not 1 month, not 3 months down the road. We need to start addressing it now, as soon as possible. So, thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to step forward, have a comment?
My name is Andrew Pitzker on 1707 County Road 565, approximately 3 doors down from 3 Silver Spruce. As Peg has mentioned before, the Stasi, this has been going on for almost 10 years. And this is supposed to be a residential site that's being treated as a commercial site. Not only are we having more than just a significant home improvement, this has been a commercial dumping site for soil that goes beyond home improvements. So the other thing that was supposed to have been done back in 2009, 2010 is that the commercial vehicles that are on this property were supposed to have been removed. That has not happened. So there's also other violations besides just the dumping and core sampling. When is this going to be addressed? That's also part of the situation here. I do support everything that Harry Shoreway has said, pushing forward on this, but the amount of time that it has taken for this government to address this and now it's exacerbated itself to a variety of other areas. And we'd like to be able to address this, but it is one of the longest areas in which it has continued with no action until recently. And that action is being fought, but it's more than just the dumping. All of this equipment that sits there, this is a residential property, not a commercial zoned area. It was back in 2009, it was zoned or being requested to be zoned commercial for a cell tower. We fought that. Now it's being used as a commercial site. So there are other violations that are impacting this, and I hope you can address this. But right now, I'm very disappointed in almost 10 years of the non-commitment of this government to be able to address this. So I hope going forward, you all sitting up there are responsible for helping us get this resolved. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to thank you for your comments. However, I'd like to remind you that a lot of this action has been taking place not only on a federal level, but a state level and a county level. And the problem is that a lot of the laws and a lot of the procedures are simply not effective. You know that the EPA has been absolutely gutted at this point. The DEP has been up here. I have had the officers here on the weekend.
I sat there with the officer on the side of the road, and I agree with you. They are totally gutless. But as the town council and as part of our county here, we had other ways to stop this. One, permits were not resolved. Two, there's commercial equipment sitting on that property that we could have enforced. And I agree with you, the other parts of government, but what we can control in this town was not even addressed. So I completely agree with you, Dan, that this is the case and part of that, but our own local government failed me.
I'd like to go on and say Gene sat through a lot of these, the court proceedings. They were very long. His attorney could speak for hours on very minor points. And I don't know how many days it went on, but the fine was $75,000. The defendant paid it and was out trucking the next day.
No, it's not been paid. Nothing's been
He's
paid.
never paid it.
Oh, I was told it was being paid, or
He's
was
fighting
paid.
that.
It was appealed.
Right.
Oh, it was appealed.
And by the way, every time the police have to go to this site to stop this, we're paying for this as taxpayers.
That's right.
All right? Well, let's put the bill on 3 Silver Spruce. That bill should be put on him, not us.
Well, maybe that should have been in the...
Because that's also, every time we have to stop this, we have to make a phone call. And the trucks go by and they turn on their blinker to go there, and then the police are there. How much does that cost for each call? Put
Well,
the
now-
bill to 3 Silver Spruce.
The problem is not having extra on the force. If they're not someplace else, they're being summoned there. So,
And then they sit there for 4 hours on Saturday. All right? At what cost per hour?
Yep.
And we pay for that.
yeah.
Not to mention that our children are walking amongst those dump trucks as they get off the school bus and walk up our road. And there are 4 kids, and
Yeah.
Jules is still here, those are some of them, that walk up that road, and we have pictures of those dump trucks driving
You-
right by them. There's
Peg,
going
you're
to
not
be
being
an
picked up on the microphone. I know, but you're not being picked up on the microphone, just so
Got
you
an
know.
accident right here at the intersection.
Yes, exactly.
So,
Well, thank you
but
for your
thank,
time.
thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else that would like to step forward and have any comments? Seeing no one else, may I have a motion to close to
Motion
public?
closed.
May I have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to discuss this a little bit.
Sure.
Are they turning, Mr. Fulcrum, are the police turning these trucks away when they pull in?
The Silver
If
Spruce?
they're on site to
Yeah.
do that, they will.
Now, what about the road issue? The road issue, is it a right-of-way? Can they take, I know it's under the assumption it's a private road. I think we all believe that it was a private road, just like the other private roads here.
I'm asking for the town attorney to research that, because it does say in my deed, which is the same in the other deeds, that it is a right-of-way with a maintenance agreement. It never says it's a private road or that we have any ownership.
Or can you turn that road over to the town? That's another option.
Do that, but we need everybody to agree.
Excuse me, Peg, you cannot be heard on the microphone, so if you,
Well, you just
well, we just closed to the public, but, so I think Ms. Ohms was actually posing her questions to the business administrator.
So if you turned that road over to the town, you could put weight restrictions on the road, and you still have to have police there to enforce it, but they shouldn't be living like this. I know they've been trying, and it's very slow. Look at what happened in Sussex. That's still going on, and that's been going on for years also.
You're talking about Wantage?
Yes, Wantage, excuse me, yes.
Well, and it's happening
That
in New York.
dumping.
It's happening all around us.
Everything works very slow. But if it was on federal property, it would be taken care of in a second.
Of course.
But because it's our town property, it's slow.
The
But
only-
at any rate,
The only problem with that road, Councilmember Ohms, is that they just go to another road. He picks up the phone and he goes to another road.
I know, I understand that, and that is the dilemma. But again, without having soil testing in the ordinance that we passed, we'll never know what's being dumped. So,
Excuse me, may I have a motion to open it back to public? Excuse me, may I have a motion to open it back up to public?
Motion.
All in favor?
I,
If you'd like to step forward, thanks.
My name is Diana Kenny, and I live on 565, right on the corner of Silver Spruce and 565. And if you look out my back door, the Wallace driveway is just a little bit to the right. But my main concern right now is my water. I had my water tested about a week ago. I got arsenic in my water. When we built the house, no one ever said anything about arsenic in my water. And now I've got to have a special unit put on my kitchen sink and my refrigerator so that we can drink, safe water. And I'm wondering why. Is it because of the dumping back of me? I mean, I really think that soil needs to be tested. I had a cancer last year. Maybe it had something to do with that. I don't know. But I don't really want to see anybody else get sick if it is from that.
Mm-hmm.
I just wanted to mention that, I do have arsenic, and maybe some of the other neighbors do too. I haven't heard anything about any other water tests.
I know that they've been calling because we did have a company that offered to do some water testing at no cost.
Right.
So, and I know residents have been calling and asking for the phone number.
Okay. Because I know the neighbor that lived next door to me, now they moved away. They had to put a system on their water also. That was in 2011. That was 2 years after he started dumping. So I don't know what's in that dirt.
Chuck, is there any way we can get that soil tested?
That's been the mountain to climb that
I mean-
we had that conversation with 5 members of the DEP, Senator Rojo and Congressman Gottheimer, and we asked them, how do we get probable cause to get the soil tested? And we suggested that they go to the Attorney General. Congressman Gottheimer called the Attorney General directly and asked that we try to get that done ASAP. That was going to be
Is
2
that-
weeks ago tomorrow, and I sent an email last week to all the people that were involved in that conference call, and we have not heard anything from them yet about what they are proposing to do to get that done.
Would that be core testing, like all the way down to,
We would hope so.
can the Board of Health step in here?
No, they won't.
They won't?
Yeah.
Why not?
They said they have to take their direction from the DEP to go in to do the testing. I've asked several times for that.
I realize that this is a private road and all, but I mean, when the trucks come in, they go up his driveway, and then you're hearing the beep, beep, beeping, and then the bang, bang with the dirt coming down. And then I got this clouded dirt that goes through my yard. It's got to be going through the whole neighborhood. I mean, I moved to the country for clean air and clean water, and I don't have either one now, That's all I wanted to say.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Was there anyone else before we close it? A motion to close?
motion?
All in favor?
All right, I still want to talk about the soil ordinance. I sent my, and I have empathy. and things do work slow, unfortunate. And I know they're trying. The DEP, I mean, if the guy was found guilty in 6 other sites, what's the chances of what's happening on this site? You know, I agree with you. But anyway, I want to talk about the soil ordinance. I think there should be some changes. You told me to address them with Mr. Zielinski, which I did. So where do we go from here?
And that's what I said.
And I'm going to read my changes, but significantly, the way this ordinance is written, you don't have to have a permit for 500 cubic yards. Because you write anything that's less.
Did you just read this? Did you just read the ordinance?
No, I didn't. This is the first time I'm reading it?
Well,
no, but it jumped. I've read this over and over. Please apologize for that statement.
No.
That was very rude, Miss Murphy.
Well, that's what you said at the last meeting.
That you were rude?
No, that you were just read it.
No. Here, that's terrible. That's really degrading and very unbecoming. However, it reads, a major is anything over 500 and a minor is anything less than 500. So it needs to be 500 or greater, 500 or less. That's the way the ordinance reads. Now, I just assumed when I was reading it, it meant 500 and over, but would it stand up in a court of law? Probably not. And it jumped out at me. I have read it several times, and just so the audience knows, I did look at this several times and examined it, and that's why I have these recommendations. Things happen. Part of our job is to evaluate our decisions, and if our decisions need to be changed, we should be strong enough to say we need to change some things.
Nobody's arguing that
So
point with you.
there we go with that. So I think that needs to be addressed. There's nothing in this about aggregate. So if you've got 100 cubic yards and you don't need a permit, well, I'll get 100 cubic yards every month, right? So what I need, I don't need a permit. Something has to be a stop gate in there for aggregate. Less than 500 within a year, something like that. That needs to be in there. I think also when you're doing fill, it has to be at least 100 feet away from your neighbor's property. We have nothing in there about that. So there's a lot of things in this ordinance that needs to be addressed. And that's just a partial list. I think the town engineer needs to be involved in every one of them, major or minor. I would like to see the testing of soil. I don't know if it's in our ordinance. Is that something that's disputable, Mr. Zielinski?
Pardon me?
If it was in our ordinance to test that, I mean, if that's our law to test something that's questionable, you have to prove...
How are you testing the soil? You're testing it before it's dumped on the property or after?
Well, ideally, it would be great to test before it's dumped, but after.
After.
Oh, excuse me.
The preferred practice would be to test the soil before it's dumped.
Okay.
Before it's on someone's private property, because then you have property concerns. And then, as the business administrator indicated, you have warrant concerns and probable cause concerns.
Can you speak louder? I'm sorry.
Once it's on somebody's property, you have property concerns with going onto someone's property without their permission to test it. So the appropriate procedure would be to test it before it is placed on someone's property.
Okay, so maybe but then that holds up everything, because you can't,
Well, but you have to balance, you ultimately have to balance, and the council has to balance, and just for the public's edification, that this ordinance went through significant revisions with the town attorney, and you have to balance how much restriction do you want versus how much do you want to allow landscapers and contractors to move soil within town. The council ultimately has to make that determination on how much restriction you want to place and how much freedom you want to give people.
Well, in this instance, for now, for this general time frame, I think we need to be restrictive. Of course, I don't want the excavators, but we did exclude them in the ordinance to some degree. But in maybe, 5 years or 2 years down the ground, we can relax on this. But right now, I think it needs to be more restrictive. So I would like to see, like we just suggested down at the end there, for soil testing somehow to be addressed. And then the way it's written, there's some things in the way it's written that doesn't make sense. That the engineer is going to, like I sent to you, right? You don't have to put this information in the application, but yet the engineer is going to be looking for it. It's not even in the application. How could he look for it? So these are some things that need to be addressed. And I think we should either have a work session or hash this out again. I did what I was supposed to, and I don't know where we're going to go from there after I handed it to Mr. Zielinski.
Well, and as I mentioned to you, that the meeting that took place, that was in the stages of planning since April 5th. Some of those recommendations that Chuck is waiting to hear back from, that they're going to be implementing some changes along with other recommended changes.
So
for
why
the
don't we
ordinance.
have a work session? I make a motion to have a work session so we can hear these changes and discuss them. Maybe we, as a group, don't like the changes. Maybe we might have to add. I don't want to go through a new ordinance and then we discuss it again. This is all backwards. I agree with Ms. Rinker. Just put it out on the table with a work session.
We can't schedule a work session without having the response back.
All right, when we get the response, I make a motion that we have a work session when we get that response back.
That's fine.
I'll second it.
Great, thank you. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
But, so we don't know, like I said, but all of
We
that,
get it.
all of that was planned.
Okay,
But-
when we get it, and we can address my concerns, we can address their concerns, and we can maybe have the engineer there, and we can go over it. We have to be more restrictive now until this passes.
And again, that was one of the reasons that the mayor was bringing up having an ordinance drafted to restrict or to regulate dirt brokers, to actually be able to do this, because having the businesses moving dirt in town, if they're doing a septic or they're putting in a pool, if it's within the community, you do not want to restrict them from being able to work, because you'll be shutting down the businesses. But bringing the dirt in from outside, that's one of the things that they're looking at. And like I said, I think the mayor said it's been a couple years since the legislature's been working on this, and they haven't really gotten anywhere with it. So,
Okay, so I did get a second from Dan, and we will have a work session when the information's available, and I'll be happy with that.
Can I
Right?
make a comment?
Yes.
Just to let you know that 2 of the applications that were submitted to the township engineer were not approved, 2 current applications.
And this was the soil dumped already, or
The soil that
it was
was
dumped
delivered
already,
to
was
property
not
already,
approved?
The
And why?
The applications were not approved.
Can I find out why? Because that will help with this revamping of the ordinance.
I'll distribute the engineer's
Thank
findings
you.
to the
Thank you.
council.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
and the, anyway, we are down to, is there any other comments on this? And by the, nobody is objecting to testing, so if there's any indication that whether it was the mayor or anybody from the council thinking that testing shouldn't be done, but when you have everything that you start to put in place, and especially when you end up in a court of law, you're hoping that at some point you're going to get relief. And what we found out is no one is doing anything about it. So, but we hope to change that. So in the meantime, do you have any council comments?
Just one. I had asked the mayor to put the environmental commission minutes on, and I did see he put the first 2 months, I think January and February. I believe they've had more meetings than that they would be approved by now, and if they are available to put them online. And that's all I have to say.
Councilmember Kadish?
Well, I'd just like to say one thing, and it's just my opinion, that if you're making up an ordinance to stop what you perceive as being an abuse, I would think you'd want to hear from Mr. Wallace as well.
He was here, he could have stepped forward. Is there any other? That's it.
That's it.
No, I mean, this has been going on for 10 years, and it's amazing that there's not an ordinance, there wasn't an ordinance already. And we did get an ordinance. It might not be perfect, and we'll have a work session and we'll make it better. But we're going to try to stop it, just so you know. So,
Councilmember Olberger.
I honestly thought the night that we did the discussion, which I need the clerk to correct me, isn't this form of government now, instead of a work session under the old form, now a discussion during the meeting on the agenda?
Yes, we put a discussion in the meeting.
So in lieu of the old form was work sessions, this form is this.
You can do either.
You can
We
do
could
either.
do anything we want. It doesn't matter.
Just wanted to clarify. That meeting that we had, I thought was one of the better meetings. We had the professionals here, both the engineer, the zoning office, we had quite a few contractors. We tried to make an ordinance that seemed like everybody that night was happy with, and I thought it was one of the better meetings that we had. And we should tweak it now that we see that there are problems and try to address those. But I thought that was actually the way government should actually work. Everybody had input. What else? I think this is to the administration part. There needs to be more working with the Board of Ed and the township with shared services, because I saw over the weekend a contractor sweeping at the schools. And it just seems like it's such a waste of taxpayer money, because the DPW always used to do it, and I don't know why, what reason, why it couldn't be scheduled to be done, but it just seems like we need to work more with the shared services instead of, wasting. And the last thing I have is please support the Vernon and Highland Lakes Fire Department this Saturday for our fireworks. Your support is how we put them on. That's all I have.
Thank you.
So, I have a question. So what, did they use a street sweeper up there at the school?
Yeah, there was a private contractor sweeping the schools, and it used to always be that the DPW did it.
And when did it stop? When did they?
It's one of those problems that the Vernons had for a while. We used to have 2 road sweepers, and you know how things are, do more with less. So now there's one. And that particular one that we had some problems initially, and it was down for repairs quite often. But it's gotten, hopefully, the bugs worked out, and it's been going. But, trying to cover a town, and you keep taking over more roads, and you keep putting out less equipment to do it, so it takes time to get around, but it's just something that we always did, and it seems like it would save money. So that's why I'm just asking.
I thought when Vic was here, we bought a new one.
That's what he's talking about.
Oh, that's the one that's down and...
Well, we bought one new one, but like I said, we used to
right.
have 2.
Oh,
We used to have 3 tractor brooms that would also go around and sweep off the roads when it was damp, not residential, but like along some of the main roads. We don't have any tractor brooms anymore. The county still does that. So, we're behind in our equipment just because we are. It's just going by the wayside.
Chuck, Mr. Volker, do you ever discuss that with Board of Ed, these shared services? Or has this ever come up? I mean, that would be a perfect example.
But I think that's what he was asking, if they could do that.
Well, I don't think I...
That one in
did you answer
particular
it?
has not come up before at all.
Mm-hmm.
As I think a lot of people in the audience are aware that we have not finished the town with the one sweeper that we have.
Oh, no, I'm
We're
talking
trying
with
to
the
get
Board of
to-
Ed.
Pardon me?
With the Board of Ed, have
Well,
you guys
the Board
ever
of Ed is on a
discussed it?
timetable of their own, because typically things that they try to improve around the schools start immediately once
Mm-hmm.
schools are done. We're still out trying to get the community done with the street sweeper. I don't know, as Mr. Allberger referred to, when we had 2, it might have been a little bit easier, plus we had more people. Now we're doing more with less, and I don't know whether they'd be interested, but I can check with them.
Okay. Thank you.
Did you have anything else? Just also so the public's aware, our agendas, the agenda is posted online. So when we're voting on resolutions, and I think Ms. Jacobs mentioned that there was no discussion, a lot of we have already read them. We have the ability to call and inquire about it. Some of them do not require necessarily comments up here or any discussion. But if the members of the public would like to review them, it's all posted online prior to that. Then as far as addressing some of these issues. Like I said, it's been long coming for some of the residents. Started back from Environmental Commission minutes that you can go back to 2009, since you bring up the minutes. And I've even asked, because I think there's only the first 6 months of the Environmental Commission minutes are posted from 2009. The last are not, but it does include Mr. DeStasian, where he was speaking about the cell tower and that how the road, how everything started to change. So it's been going on. Like I said, the mayor was able to find records. So all of this discussion's going on. And then, like I said, I know Mike Fury is here. He was on the commission for a time back then. He's actually the chair right now, and he was involved in that meeting that they had. He actually was the one that put it together. So, because I know there were several members of the public that attended the last Environmental Commission meeting, but that meeting, actually, he started working on that on April 5th, and he was just able to put all the professionals that he had together. And quite frankly, they were coming here, they were giving their input on things, but they did not want to come to a council meeting. It was not something that they necessarily wanted to put themselves out there for one reason or another. But anyway, in the meantime, like I said, if anybody has any questions, you're certainly free. I know, like I said, I've spoken to Mr. and Mrs. DeStasi quite a few times. You can go to court tomorrow and see if anything happens. I'm not sure if it'll be postponed. You could probably call the court to see if there's an approximate time, but that's where we're left. All right. Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.